And it's a lot easier just to stay comfortable and easy. That's why artists have such a hard life, because we're always pushing ourselves and tearing ourselves apart to get to know ourselves, to try to create something. And insofar as we're trying to create something, we're also creating ourselves.
Hi, everyone. This is Sam, NFT Stats on Twitter. And today on the podcast, we have Trey Ratcliff. Now, Trey is someone I've admired for a very long time. Back in 2010, 2011, kind of before Instagram was even out there, he had a website called Stuck in Customs that ultimately had a multi-million person distribution where he taught people about high dynamic range photography and really just built a business out of being a travel photographer, something that almost no one was doing at the time. His career he went down an affiliate advertising path. He later went down a fine art prints path where both became multi-million dollar businesses. And then he later, no surprise, got into NFTs. He recently launched a project called 1K1K. It's 1,000 images from all over the world. And we talk about that project in this podcast. He also calls himself a high functioning hippie, has a really unique personality, really open, charismatic, and I think he lets a lot of that show in this podcast. So for me, it was a real honor to get to talk to Trey. I think he's always just been a really innovative artist, someone who's really been open with his work, gives away a lot of content for free, and through that has built a really unique following. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I enjoyed it a lot. It's just so awesome to have Trey Ratcliff on the podcast. Trey, welcome.
Thank you, Sam. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. It's a little bit later, so I got my artificial light today. But it's been a good one. I wanted to start. I've actually been following your work for a long time, and the thing that has always impressed me the most about you is even before Instagram was around, you were building out a website and a social platform that was kind of before influencers were influencers. You were making a business out of travel photography. Then you were one of the first guys to get a drone. I'm not surprised now that you're in NFTs, that you're doing AI. It just feels like you're always at the forefront of what's next. I'm kind of curious, how have you thought about your business strategy going back? You've been doing this for 12 years, just that's always allowed you to be kind of at the front of what's new and exciting.
Oh, well, thank you. That's nice of you to say. By the way, you know this. I guess people that follow me know this. I don't take myself that seriously at all. In fact, I think that's one of the greatest gifts any artist or creative or anyone can give themselves, is sort of the dissolution of the ego, because it allows you to be in the flow state and allows you to be very sensitive to energies and make, good decisions for short, medium, and long term. And to your point, or to your question, is something that influenced me very early on was one of my heroes, Kevin Kelly, who I eventually got to meet. How amazing is it to meet your heroes? And Kevin is the gentleman that started Wired magazine, and he's all over AI, and he's done like 3 TED Talks. He's sort of a futurist philosopher kind of guy. And he wrote this really influential essay, which I'm sure you know about, called 1,000 True Fans. And the gist of the essay is that you don't need to have like hundreds of thousands or millions of followers. All you need is 1,000 people that really believe in what you do. And those 1,000, that's literally all you need, because, not that life is about making money or getting rich or anything like that. Like Naval says, money doesn't solve all your problems. It solves your money problems. But I know artists have a particularly tough time making financial ends meet. And there's so many great artists out there. So I really attribute that article in particular to it. Because if you have 1,000 true fans that follow pretty much everything you do, they're more than happy to part with their money to get some of your art. It's a perfect exchange. And so if you have 1,000 true fans and you're able to, sell them $100 worth of stuff a year, that's, $100,000 right there. And so that was kind of the financial aspect behind it. That came a little bit later after I started the blog you mentioned, because I got so into photography, particularly the style called HDR, high dynamic range, that I immediately started to share everything that I took because I was so fascinated with it. And I did stuff that no one else was doing. I mean, I can look back, it looks like a master plan. It wasn't. But I would share huge files, like full res files with no watermark. No photographers did that back then, and I got a lot of hate for it, by the way. I also made everything Creative Commons. I just gave everything away, and I said, just please link back to the blog if you don't mind. So they spread like wildfire because they were big, beautiful photos, and no one else was doing that at the time. And also, I would share my techniques. I would tell everybody exactly how I did these things. I would have tutorials and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know if you remember this back in the olden days, 14, 15 years ago, but people like photographers did not share their secrets. It was like a secret club, the old style photographers, or what I call the creepy uncles, where you had to go to this brick and mortar building to learn the tools of the trade, like a blacksmith or something. I thought that was ridiculous. And so I always had this childlike nature to me. And I think about my own kids, they'll sit there and they'll just create art, on a construction paper in a house with glitter glue. And they'll run around the house and share it with everybody because they're so excited. And there's no ego involved with that as a kid. That's actually, I think, what humans do is we create and we share, and then we see what happens. So that's always been the impetus. Later on top of that, I've realized that this creativity is kind of a meditation. And if people enjoy the photo, it allows them to be present for a little while. So it's almost like a small meditation. And then secondarily, hopefully I can inspire them to create in their own way, whether it's through art or, making pastries or whatever creative pursuit you might have. And then you can slowly move the needle on consciousness and love in the world, because the more people that can enter like a present meditative state, create and share with the world, like the better the world becomes.
Yeah, no, you just dropped so much knowledge on us. I'm trying to kind of recap it all in my head. But one thing that's super interesting here is, I think CC0 debate, not debate, but the differences of opinion in the space and the different approaches people take. It sounds like you've had that. And do you still have it is all your work CC0?
Yes, it is. People can do whatever they want to with it. And that's still a bit of a crucifix to the vampire to a lot of artists out there. But I generally trust people, right? And like people are always worried. Some photographers or artists are worried about like big corporations stealing your work and using it to make money. Well, legitimate corporations don't really steal, right? It might happen from time to time, and then you just contact them, and usually you don't have to sue them. You'll just kind of settle out of court. I mean, it even happened with me and Google, and they were using one of my images from here in New Zealand. It's actually part of the collection of the Aurora Australis. They call it the Aurora Australis on the southern hemisphere and Borealis on the northern one. And it's a really pretty photo, if I do say so myself, and I do. And they would use it on all their Chromebooks, right? And then they would sell, like hundreds of millions of Chromebooks on Amazon and all over. And it was kind of my picture on there, right? Because basically all laptops look the same to a certain degree. But like my image made their laptop look like, oh, that's a really nice laptop because it's got a nice image on it. And so, so they didn't, we didn't have to get into a lawsuit with them or anything. And it was kind of a mistaken thing. And we ended up just settling for an amount. But that's sort of an edge case. In general, if you just give your stuff away, people enjoy using it for their backgrounds, for their website. I let people make personal prints if they want to. It's not one of our official real life fine art collection prints, but people can make prints. They can do whatever they want to with it. And I find that people are so appreciative, and it's a long life. And maybe in the beginning, when people follow me and enjoy the work, they don't have any money. Sometimes you don't acquire wealth until later in life. Maybe you have to try a few different things to get to that point. But they remember me, and I'm going to be making art the rest of my life. And maybe later they'll come actually buy something from me. And so all of that free work I did, 15 years ago, is now finally paying dividends. Although that wasn't part of my grand plan before, but it just lets me believe further in karma and being open-hearted and being vulnerable and just allowing the universe to conspire to help make you successful.
This is just a technicality, but I am curious. Given your work was CC0, you still can sue. You still were in a position that you could ask Google not to use it for their own commercial purposes. I just understood that CC0 meant any piece could be used by whoever wanted.
Well, Creative Commons has a few mini shards, if you will. Mine was non-commercial.
Okay.
But however, like everything, all my NFTs, people can use them commercially. But corporations are not really, they don't really buy NFTs to use commercially. It might just be individuals. Usually if it's a big corporation or someone that's, they'll actually do like a side deal with you, rather than, just try to buy an NFT and then use it to launch some new product.
What I think is so fascinating about what you did, and like I said, I was a travel photographer living in Asia in 2011, and I always looked to you as someone who really kind of figured out how to make a life out of this business back in the Flickr days, before, like I said, before the Instagram or influencer was out there. But I think, every artist is so different, and every artist has a different business model in mind and a different brand. And it feels like you found that your brand was in building an audience. And if you build an audience and having people who appreciate your work and those 1,000 fans, then you don't have to be precious about making sure your work is never copied by anybody else or never used in any other way. It feels like your business was really focused on the customer service and on the customer and who that person who was interacting with not just your work, but your multimedia, who that person was.
Yes, our income streams have really vacillated over time. And to me, the art and beauty and love and consciousness and all my hippie woo-woo stuff. I'm a high functioning hippie, by the way, Sam.
I feel that, track. I can feel that. We're just 10 minutes deep and I feel it.
And in the beginning, the blog had a pretty decent following. And like you said, this is back in the Flickr days. It's before Facebook or Twitter or anything. And I got more and more followers on the blog. And I started my tutorial for free. And back then, kind of a thing to do was, affiliate links, right? And you would get a percentage. Like I would recommend this software called Photomatics, for example, which was this HDR software. And I would get like 15% of every sale. And it was kicking along all right. I got, this was early days. And like I had another job at the time. I was doing an online game company. My degree is computer science and math, so I've always been sort of a tech nerd. And I had the blog going because I was just loving the photography. And I started this game company and it got to be big, like 100 people. So we brought in another CEO because I don't know how to manage 100 people. Like I can manage a tight team, of like 15 people that are dreamers like me, probably like proof, right? And they'll gladly work, 40, 80-hour weeks. And I don't really have to micromanage them because they know what to do. But when the company gets too big, you have to bring in someone else sometimes. And so I kind of drifted into the background. I was taking photos. The blog became my thing. Started doing these little affiliate links things, started goofing around with Google and stuff like that. And it was making maybe $50K a year. And then I had a fan contact me. And he goes, Trey, I am an SEO expert. So I just rolled my eyes because these guys contact you all the time. I'm like, I try not to be too judgy, but I was like, I understand SEO. I'm a comp sci guy. I know how Google works. I understand the web. I know how spiders work. I get it. He goes, will you just teach me photography for 1 hour and let me do some tweaks on your website because I think you're sitting on a gold mine. I'm like, oh, all right. What could it hurt? And he did. He helped me install like a few plugins for WordPress that I didn't know about that would help like Google understand what I was writing about. Because sometimes when you Google something, like say you Google, HDR tutorial, for example, or like Nikon D2X review, what it would say was like Nikon D2X review. And then underneath it would say like learn about Nikon, camera, Nikon, photos from Nikon, like it would have just kind of this gobbledygook in Google. Well, this is like a little simple plugin that would say, you could actually control what the Google results say, like, come read this review of the Nikon D2X from award-winning photographer Trey Ratcliff and see lots of beautiful photos and decide if you like this camera. So like mine looked best. And so slowly they would move up and I started winning in all these different photography Google searches. And then, so my income jumped up to about 100K a year. I thought that's pretty cool. And this guy contacted me again and he goes, Trey, I want you to come to Atlanta to this pornography conference. And I was like, what? I thought, well, hey, that sounds kind of fun, but why? And he goes, well, like all these SEO nerds go there. It's basically pornography and gambling because they are the ones that kind of lead the way on like getting people to their sites. And he goes, you actually have like not that those sites are illegitimate. Well, some are, but like he says, you have a great website that's full of just like thousands of photos, like incredible, good, long writing content, all this stuff. He goes, you are on a gold mine. He goes, if you just use the same tricks that these guys use, they're not tricks as in like conniving, manipulative tricks. It's just like teaching the search engines how your content is so much better than everyone else's. So after I went to that, I implemented some of the tricks and it jumped up to like 500,000 a year. And I was like, wow, man, this is fun because I was able to like do art and do techie stuff. But then over time, over years, like affiliate income went worse and worse and worse because there was more competition and affiliate worked differently. But by then I was much more established and I had millions of followers, 5, 6, 7 million. And I started doing fine art. And then so I shifted into like real life fine art where I did huge prints and real limited edition. And that turned into another multi-million-dollar business, which is I always find surprising. And it's still doing very well. And then so that has kind of plateaued. It still does really well. But then NFTs came out of nowhere like a shadow in the night. And so now, of course, I'm all over NFTs. And I just like trying new stuff and making mistakes. I have no fear. And I know I'm talking a lot about money, so that seems a bit gauche to talk about that stuff. So I really am a little sensitive to it. However, I do know people are interested in it. And it's good to know, like, man, I've been struggling the whole time, trying different things. Some stuff works, some doesn't work. I'm talking about the successes here, not just the morass and the flotsam and jetsam of my horrible mistakes, which in retrospect seem incredibly stupid. But I always say, well, it seemed like a good idea at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you talking about it, and I think a lot of the listeners do too, just because, with photographers and with just art in general, I think the business of art and the business of how do you kind of progress through a career and feed your family and and do well is often a mystery to people, and to hear your success stories is super interesting. One thing that jumped out at me earlier was how even though you gave away the files, even though people could technically go print them at home, you were still able to build a fine print, a business selling prints, even though they could have done it on their own for free. Is that, and that was through labeling it as official Trey Ratcliff photography, or did I get that wrong? And if not, how did you maintain that? How'd you pull that off?
Well, I picked out of my thousands of photos, I picked just 21 of some really nice pieces that had a nice thematic nature. And I made that series 1. And each of those are only 3. And then after 3, we sell out. And we made them huge, like some are like 3 meters or 10 feet across. So they can't really fit on normal people's walls. These have to be kind of serious collectors. And we priced them quite high, like 75,000 USD for number 1 and number 2. And then number 3 is 95,000 because it's the last seat on the plane. And a lot of this was influenced by the $14 million stuffed shark, or I forgot the exact name of the book, the Damien Hirst one that I know was book number one in the Proof book club. And, that book is basically about why would somebody pay $14 million for a shark and formaldehyde? Seems ridiculous. And the author is a real skeptic, but he takes it through you step by step so that you understand. So I'll tell you about one of my mistakes that led to that. I would have just like an online gallery like everyone else. And I had like probably 500 really pretty photos for sale. And I would price them like, $100, $200, 300, like really affordable, but I hardly sold any. And when I would kind of ask people, like do market research that liked my work, I'm like, I'm not offended. As I know you have enough money, but why didn't you buy any? And most of the time, the reason is they just couldn't choose. So it's the old paralysis by analysis thing. And so I decided like, okay, just forget all that. I get it. And you're not really making that much money anyway. You're just kind of like one of these people that's like at a farmer's market with their little booth set up. And nothing against those people at all, but that's a hard life as an artist, So I decided to go really high end. And the idea when you get into this upper echelon of collectors, which is no surprise to people that are into the NFT world, is they might buy a print, which sounds expensive, for $75K, and they put it on their wall. And these are often fancy people, and they got little fancy dinner parties with all their fancy friends. And they come over and they give tours of their art, because once you reach a certain level of wealth, everyone has nice homes. Everyone has like nice cars and yachts or planes or whatever. But the art is the only thing that's truly unique. And every piece of art has a story attached to it. So, people would come by and see it like, I want that. And like, oh, it's sold out. But they can sell theirs. They bought it for $75,000. They might sell it for $250,000 to one of their buds, and they make a profit, moves over to their wall. I don't get any of that because this is pre-NFT days. And then hopefully that collector is so happy, they come back and they buy more from me. So that was a bit of a scary decision to go so high end, but it ended up getting me into a network with really high end collectors, a lot of whom are anonymous. There's a few like celebrity collectors and sports stars and things like that. So there's a bit of a zeitgeist thing that can happen. So that turned out to be a good decision.
That's it. I mean, two things that have come up with some of the other creators I've spoken with. I mean, Claire Silver, a great AI artist, talked about how she couldn't sell her NFTs for 0.08 ETH, so she raised her price to 1 ETH, and suddenly everything started to sell, which I just think is such an interesting anecdote.
Yeah, and the other thing, Claire's awesome, by the way. I loved your interview with her, and thank God I finally found someone like Claire that is such a good spokesman for AI. I hear a lot of these same. I don't sell any of my AI art, by the way, but I love doing it and I share it. God, I get so much hate. It's unbelievable. And just the complaints, they just drive me crazy. And she has incredible arguments about like why AI is good. It's not evil, man.
Yeah, I know. I'm pumped to talk to you about AI as well, because that's definitely a theme I want to get to, because I think your AI work is very cool. I'm also interested in the idea of letting people who hate on you get to you, because I imagine being an artist in the public space for so long, it's something you would eventually grow quite numb to. So, one of the reasons I thought it'd be fun to have you on right now is you just launched this NFT collection. Do you want to, you've launched a couple NFT collections before. Do you want to give a sense of what makes this special and kind of where it fits into your repertoire of NFTs?
Yes. In a lot of ways, I would call this my first like real collection. Not to dismiss anything I did earlier, but I like to get in early and do many different experiments, right? I think the very first one I launched was one with Kevin, and I took a Burning Man photo and I put it on Foundation. That's what he suggested. I was just getting started and figuring out what the hell was going on. And then we took the profits and split them 50-50 and gave them all to charity, by the way. And then so I was like, okay, so that's how Foundation works. So I did a few more there. And then I had an old friend that I met at Pinterest who worked at Maker's Place. He goes, hey, will you launch one here? I said, yeah, sure. I'll put up some there and see how that works. So that was my first collection of like more than one, and there still wasn't really a marketplace leader there. And then I launched some on OpenSea. And in the middle of COVID, when we're all stuck at home, I thought, you know what? I bet people are longing to travel. And I bet they have some favorite places that they would love to go revisit. So I launched just 50 photos in a collection I call Beautiful Cities of the World. And that one did well. I think it's over 500 ETH or so. Still selling quite well. And then, so really, for about a year and a half, I've been working on this collection, which just launched, which is called 1,000 Photos from 1,000 Places Around the World. No, it's called 1,000 Photos well, now I forget the exact name. I should know it because I launched the dang thing.
1,000 stories from 1,000 places across the world. Here's your
right.
Here's your beautiful cities one pulled up. Yeah, it looks like 0.88
right.
ETH floor, but this is 1,000 stories from 1,000 places around the world.
And so I picked 1,000 photos, and then I have a different story for each one. And the stories, they might be embarrassing stories. They might be like a life lesson. It might be about some weird psychedelic trip I had, a mistake I made, something hilarious that happened, something inappropriate that happened. And so we actually did a word count of all the stories, and it came out to about 120,000 words, which is the same as like a long Harry Potter novel. And it took so long to put all this stuff together, like probably, 400 or 500 hours. And that doesn't even include how long it took for me to get to all these places and take all these photos and process them all. That's just kind of this particular project. And so this has this wonderful theme. It's a nice number, 1,000. I'm in love with all the photos. So I think that I've taken everything that I've learned over all my past drops, all of which have gone very well, by the way. Everything I've learned in the Proof Collective, I've just been sitting there soaking up information. I know everyone thinks I'm just this buffoon in there that makes inappropriate jokes, but I do take my art quite seriously, and I'm so committed to my community and my collectors. And I've looked at all the mistakes that everyone else has made. And so I've learned from their mistakes. And I've looked at stuff that works. I know kind of like the perfect size for a collection. I understand how to communicate and connect and deliver with the community. And so that's why I did it. And, it's a terrible market right now, right? It's the middle of a bear market. Who would launch a major NFT project in the middle of a bear market? Me. That's who would do it. I'm just crazy enough to do it. But if you're going to do it, you're going to do it the right way. And it has to be perfect, because if you're in the middle of a bear market and you don't have the right kind of short, medium, and long-term thinking, and you don't execute perfectly, it's going to fall apart. And I want to hopefully this is the beginning of a new bull market that's going to be coming along the way. And I wanted to give a chance for people to get in early at a very inexpensive price and get people really excited about it, and just kind of get the joy of collecting art going again, because that's really what we're all in the NFT space for, especially inside of Proof and a few other communities, in that we really do care about the art. Yeah, we might buy some PFPs here and there and flip them to make some money. Nothing wrong with that. And there's lots of amazing art out there, but I was really focused on the art and just making people happy and inspiring them to have an amazing life and get out there and travel or take photos or do something creative and, spread joy and light and love into the world and this sort of thing.
What would you say are some of those lessons that you've learned that you kind of brought with you into this collection, as far as learning from the Proof Collective or learning from what's been about a year, right, of having NFTs on the marketplace?
Yes. Well, one thing I did with the Beautiful Cities of the World collection, which was the one before, is you're always wondering, how the hell do I price these things? And so my pricing it wasn't all over the place, but I took my favorite ones and made them a lot more expensive, sort of like the lobster on the menu. But now for this one, I decided to make everything practically free at 0.1 ETH. rather than like selling Bibles to the choir, right? It's better to like to grow the overall choir and bring more people in and bring more eyeballs in, and just get more and more people involved with the fun.
Yeah, and it brings up a hot topic right now. But for royalties, are you did you do the contract where you have disallowed exchanges that are not royalty obliging, or
I I don't know. I think we set up the contract currently at 7.5%. We'll probably lower that over time. And I think we disabled Blur. I'm not sure about the people that did the contract.
got it?
But yeah, that's kind of how I keep the lights on and keep paying the bills. And
People don't have to justify their decisions around their business. And, I think every collector who, as long as collectors know going in that they can't trade on certain exchanges where royalties aren't honored, then you're being transparent and people can make that decision when they decide whether or not to buy the NFT.
yeah, and I don't think it's really an issue until they becomes like super valuable, like stuff that trades, I would say over 25 ETH or 50 ETH. Then that becomes a pretty big number. And I think by the time a collection hits that point and the stuff is that valuable, it's already made enough money. So I don't think that the creator care. I wouldn't care if all these things are selling at Bored Apes prices. I'm not going to be worried about royalties anymore because it will have already made more than enough money. And anyway, by then I'm going to be moving on to like my next project to deliver more goodies to the original collectors and do airdrops and stuff like that. Um, Luckily, my collections have made enough money where I'm not really focused on that so much. But I do think the ongoing royalty stream for artists is one of the greatest things about Ethereum. And I don't want to see that go away.
Yeah. Having sold, really run a business in kind of the in real life world, the offline world. Although your business has always been online because of the website and whatnot. But how would you say the NFT collector is different from your collectors that you had for your physical work?
Yeah, it's a good question. My real life collectors almost do no NFT stuff, and my NFT collectors don't do any of the real life stuff. Never the twain shall meet. Now they will come together. A lot of my real life collectors, I talk with their art teams because almost I don't have a lot of billionaire collectors, but I've got a handful, and like I'm friends with them. But I do all the negotiation. They have an art person, right, that manages their art across multiple houses. It's like a full. They have full-time art people, right? And some of them are slowly getting interested in NFTs. Like I'm always talking them up. I'm like, come on, guys, it's 2023. Let's get with the program.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this kind of goes with the last question, but how do you think about this business that you're in now? And I know it's much more to you than a business, but like the NFT business, when you compare that to the two other ones you mentioned, like the affiliate link from probably 2012, the print sales and fine art business of print sales, and not now really being in the NFT business, how is that different for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's almost an entirely different business. It's so much more inexpensive to produce and ship the good, like to make our prints in Germany, just like the raw fabrication cost can be anywhere, from $10,000 to $20,000 just for the print itself. It might cost, another 1,000 plus to create and ship, plus the cost of, all the labor and gas and just to move a piece of art from one place to another. And has a charming old school effect. I think that will always be in play, just like old books and that sort of stuff. But the amount of effort it takes to get a piece to a collector is hard. And, it's the same thing for them when they resell it. They have to get it professionally, like removed from the wall, professionally crated, mountains of bubble wrap and get it off to the next collector. That's a real pain. And no one likes to go through the pain. And also, by the way, some of these, you probably know this. A lot of people know this. Some of the wealthiest collectors in the world, they're some of the cheapest fuckers in the world. I mean, they'll do anything to save a dime or two, right? Because a lot of them got to where they are because they pinched the pennies. So I think that will be an impetus to help move people in that direction too. NFTs to me are so much more fun. They just kind of have that magical fun element to it. That's an X factor that traditional art doesn't have. And as we go more and more digital, and we're at this place now where people don't yet have like digital displays in their home that are big and beautiful and inexpensive, but it's all obviously going in that direction. And there's going to be like, one of those J curves about that's how the cool people share art in their homes. Because even though we're in this distributed kind of Zoom like environment where we're all in our little boxes and not that social anymore, people do go over to each other's homes for parties and events and dinner parties and gatherings. That is a basic human sort of ritual, and that won't go away. And when people come over, they do like to share their art or things that are important to them and put like a crummy squiggle on the wall or whatever. And and the cool thing about these digital displays is, of course, they can rotate. You might see something new every 30 seconds or every minute while you're having dinner. And then every photo or every piece of art is like a portal to another conversation or another story. And it doesn't matter how interesting a conversation is or how interesting a set of points or factoids is. The only thing people really remember is stories. And a piece of art is a perfect gateway for someone to tell a story. And that's what sticks with people.
That's one thing that kind of just tying together a couple of things you said. Like it's like that story that is so important with the art, but then also that was why each of your NFTs came with a story, and I feel like you really understand that element of storytelling that can connect an owner or a collector with a piece, for this 1K project you just did, every single NFT comes with its own story that just gives that narrative behind the piece.
Yeah, stories are super important. I learned that from my mom, actually. Like in the beginning, I used to just put out my photos and I was like, oh my God, this photo speaks for itself. It's so, again, I was not over
Of course.
being a little bit dramatic. My mom was like, you know what? People really want to know about the stories. They want to know about you. They want to know about your struggles or what you've learned and this kind of stuff. I was like, no, I don't. I didn't really want it to be about me. And so, but I do know it does inspire people. Let people know, like, God, the struggles I have, like the things I've learned about relationships and raising kids and life and business and hardships and you just got to keep going through all of it, and that's great because in a way it's not really, if you make it more about, I try not to make it about me, it's more about the idea of creation where I'm just kind of the vessel and the storyteller. And in so many ways it's like I don't really feel like I take these photos. I feel like I have an open heart. I'm very vulnerable, and this allows me to channel whatever the universe is developing for me. And then I kind of create it. I'm kind of a tool in the hands of the universe.
That's one thing I'm super curious about, and is your creative process. And I guess for a photographer, it's a little different because you're not just, I mean, in your case, you are taking photographs and then going to the canvas a little bit. But if you go, like when you travel to a new place and you're on your own and you're going for the first time to Nepal, to Tokyo, to whatever, I mean, you've been to Tokyo a ton of times, but to random city, what's your process like for starting there and getting the photos you want to get?
My process has changed a little bit as I've learned different things and as I've changed and grown. I'll tell you how it started and where it is now. When it started, this is back in the days of Flickr, right? Which I loved. Flickr was great.
I love Flickr, man. I was a Flickr
Yeah.
addict, and I'm just like, why didn't I get Instagram? Like, why didn't I get into Instagram? I have like 30,000 followers on Flickr and like, 2,000 on Instagram, but go on. I'm sorry.
Let's go into the Wayback Machine, before Twitter and Facebook and all that jazz. There was just Flickr. And by the way, you might know this, but Flickr wasn't meant to be Flickr. Butterfield, who I think made it Stuart Butterfield, they were designing a game, like an online game. And one of the things in the game you could do is you could take pictures and you could share the pictures. And that's what Flickr was. The game kind of sucked, but they're like, hey, this picture sharing thing is kind of cool. So they pivoted to that. Anyway, so a good example is before I went to Angkor Wat in Cambodia, which is someplace that I always wanted to go. So you go on Flickr and you type in like Cambodia or Angkor Wat, and it shows you all these incredible photos of the temple Angkor Wat. And they're all good photos, right? So I would look at all the photos, look at the angles, look at the time of day, just kind of figure out what lens they used. Is there a reflection involved? What's the composition? And so before I went, I would look at all those photos. I would I'm going to get the best photo of this goddamn place. Like, I'm real competitive, right? I don't really care if I'm not like violently competitive or anything, but I'm like, it drives me. Like looking at other artists, it's not that I have to be better than them or anything, but there's an element like I at least want to get up in their league. I want to get something in the top 10%. And so I would go there, and then I would just, go out there every morning, take different photos, try different things. Because then my goal is like, when people search for Angkor Wat in the future, I want to be number one. And then I would try to do that, whatever, with the Eiffel Tower and all these other things. Well, over a while, I got really good at it. And I also figured out how to game the system a little bit on Flickr, because I always see these things as like a game. I have a gaming mind, like I'm playing Civilization. I love strategy games. And the other thing I would do on Flickr is I would go look at photos that did well, and I would go read all the comments, and then I would find the people that left the longest comments. And then I would go to their photos and I would just leave them little comments here or there. Because I figured people that are on Flickr all day leaving super long comments, I'm like, these guys got a lot of spare time. And as long as they got a lot of spare time, they might as well come leave some of those long, delicious comments on my photos. So over time, I ended up just having the longest, craziest comments on my photos, which kind of helps with the search and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, all that became tiresome after a while. I kind of mastered that game. And then, even though I did love traveling to these places, I kept going. And now I would just go hit the highlights of a city. Let me think of one in particular. Okay, there's this little town in China called it's called Fenghuang, or Phoenix City.
Okay.
Fenghuang, Fenghuang. So it's a little ancient town that's super hard to get to. And I knew there were a few photos that I wanted there. So I kind of, I know I'm awake 16 hours. I think about everything mathematically in a pie charts. So I think like, okay, well, I'm going to spend, an hour in the morning getting this shot, or these two shots, and then I'm going to get these two shots at sunset. And the rest of the time, I have no idea what the heck I'm going to do. I'm just going to get lost. And so I usually have a few things I want to hit, and the rest of the time I get totally lost, whether it's wandering the streets in Fez, Morocco, taking street photos, meeting random people, and they say, there's this cool place, let's jump in the car and go. I'm like, let's go. So it gives me a lot of opportunity to try completely new things and find things I never would have found anyway. So I don't like overschedule myself like Clark Griswold on his European family vacation. I have a few little highlights, and then the rest of the time I just like to get lost and meet new people and find something and just go with the flow. And I think I learned a lot of that from going to Burning Man.
It does feel like Burning Man shows up in a lot of kind of like your compilations. It feels like a very kind of core place to what you've done. But no, I love that. I mean, it's like starting with the initial starting with the initial shots you want to get, having a little bit of research done before, and then kind of allowing an interaction with local people or to kind of guide the flow that you can get more spontaneity and unique shots that are different from what Google's already taken 100 times.
Yeah, for sure. And by the way, I'm not always thinking like, okay, how can I game the system? There's a fun strategic element of that. Really, I'm trying to create something that I think is pretty and I think is interesting. All artists, oh gosh, I shouldn't speak on behalf of all artists. I'll just speak on behalf of myself. Is that, Sam, I am so full of self-doubt. It's incredible. Yes, I have confidence and I know what I'm doing, sort of a quiet confidence. And I think that honestly, most of what I make is not very good. But when I make something good, I know it. They say like the truth has a certain ring to it. And every now and then when I make something that I think is good, or I capture something, or I capture some little essence of beauty or some little essence of truth, it just feels right. I feel this heart, mind, body, soul connection. I'm like, oh, you've done one thing right today, Trey. This is beautiful. You've captured it. It feels good. And those stand out so differently than just the sea of trash and garbage and rubbish and the burning dumpster fire of all my other work. I'm like, finally, a small phoenix rises from the ashes of my dumpster fire.
Yeah. I mean, when I was asked about travel photography, or when I would do travel photography, like the two biggest pieces of advice I'd give were, one, wake up really early, and two, only show people your good stuff. And I think that curation process of your own work is, maybe a little bit less for you, but also for you. I think for everybody, that's super important, just to preserve your brand a little bit, make sure people, you don't have to show everyone everything.
Yeah, that curation process is really important. And I remember Claire riffing on this a little bit when she was talking about how to select the best AI photos. Like, she said something really funny, like, because I think everyone has taste. And then she goes, well, maybe everyone doesn't have any taste. And I feel the same way. But I teach these photography workshops, maybe one a year for fun, because I like teaching. And a lot of people come in and they have no idea like what is an interesting composition, because they're just surrounded, especially here in New Zealand, they're surrounded by so much beautiful stuff. Like, what do I take a photo of? And one of my points is that I think everyone naturally knows what is beautiful inside. I mean, we're pre-programmed with this idea of golden ratio or Fibonacci phi, the ratio of 1 to 1.618. We just kind of know what is beautiful, but it's kind of a muscle that you have to practice. And like, if you go take, this, you're gonna run out and take travel photos. If you go take 100 photos, right? And then you just pick your favorite 5, you don't throw away the rest, but you just pick your favorite 5. That process alone works that muscle. Like, okay, these 5 are better than this 95 for whatever reason. You may not even know the reason. It's really the very soft, right-brained kind of activity. But over time, if you do that every day, like take 100 photos a day, and you exercise that beauty muscle, then it's going to get harder and harder to pick those 5 best. And now the 100 that you take will probably all be better than that initial 5 that you took, after a few years. So it is something either you learn to curate your own work that you create, or you learn to curate, which I think a lot of people now are doing, the NFT space, because we have to look at so much art. And I think people may not give themselves credit about how much progress they've made, because now they can look at something immediately and go like, that is ugly as shit, where they might not have said that before. Before they might have said, that's kind of cool. But now they see it's garish and it's full of these saturated colors and it looks like it was designed by a committee. That's why you never see a statue of a committee. And then when you see something that actually looks pretty, you're like, oh, that's quite nice. So in a way, now everybody is spending all day inside of a museum, right? Not often were you able to do that because you actually had to go to a museum. But now we're in a museum all day long. So we're all exercising that muscle of beauty, and we can much more quickly grok what is beautiful from the banal.
Yeah, no, I mean, that is one thing that's happening here is everyone's getting so much more exposure to so much more art and people, it's not always like some stuff's good, some stuff's bad, but people are starting to figure out what resonates with them. And that's kind of the beauty of the marketplace here is that 1,000 images, different people like different stuff. I always like to end podcasts with a bunch of like quick questions, kind of just get your quick takes on certain things. What are you personally collecting right now?
Well, this will disappoint you, Sam. I don't actually collect that much because I'm so busy creating. I got a squig, get an X copy, a few other things here or there. I got a lot of grails.
Mm.
I got 6 proof passes, which turned out to be one of my best decisions. And then I get to do 6 grails. Lucky me. And I know the new grails is just coming out here really soon, which I'm excited about. And this is great too, because it allows me to get ones that I'm just taking a gamble on. Like, I wonder if that's, a people or an X copy. And then so I'm able to get 3 and do gambles. And I get 3 others that I just love just for the art.
Yeah.
And I really do try to make the art come first. On occasion, I'll break my own rule and just try to get something because I think it's going to be valuable, but not really. And I've noticed that with a lot of other artists too. Like, we're so busy creating or with our community that we don't always have all the time to do all the research. That's why I love to read your reports every day. I'll keep the answers short because it's
Cool.
quick.
Awesome. Yeah. Not disappointing at all. Owning X copy, owning some squiggles, owning a bunch of grails. That's a fine collection. What best and worst part of having moved to New Zealand?
Oh gosh. The best part is, I just feel like so serene here with the nature, and it's got a very relaxed lifestyle. People have a good, kind of work-life balance, a lot of outside time in nature. It's not like go, go, go all the time. So I like that. I love the people here. You can't get Amazon stuff overnight. That's kind of a bummer, but I'm not materialistic at all. So sometimes you got to wait a few weeks to get something. Yeah, I'm kind of a Zen minimalist kind of person. So I don't really need that much, but every now and then, I'm a tech guy and I need something and you just can't find it. But that's not the end of the world. I love to try to get everyone over here. I want to have a little unofficial proof meetup over here where we just have a nice long weekend of adventuring and partying. And I think that'd be a lot of fun.
One of my favorite trips ever was Queensland or Queenstown and Wanaka. Really beautiful, beautiful places. Okay. Back to the rapid fire questions. With your collection, you have 4 special images that people can get prints of. The quick explanation for how you picked each one. I'm going to put 4 of them up. You have 6. I'm going to put 4 up. This one, and my additional question is this all natural light? But very, very quick story here.
Yes. All my photos are real. I'm good at Photoshop and I can add anything anytime. That's a mysterious place in Death Valley where these rocks mysteriously move across the desert. And that's the moon in the background. Yes, we have 6 Uber Uniques. And I guess those 4 that you're showing they're all some of my favorites. And whoever owns these particular NFTs on March 31st, which is about 3 months as of the recording of this, will get the actual print sent to them. How did we pick these 6? Well, pretty simple. We have them already printed and they're already in crates and they're sitting in this, that last scene in Indiana Jones where there's just a ton of crates. They're just sitting there. It seems like a waste. I'm like, let's get these into the hands of people that love them. So we decided to swap out 6 from the collection with 6 of these. And these are either from series 1 of my fine art collection that I mentioned earlier of 21 works or series 2 of another 21 works.
Very cool. So okay. Let's do this one. And my additional question, because I lived in Hong Kong and was always afraid to fly a drone in Hong Kong because I have had drones fall on the ground before. Does that worry you at all?
Yes. When you fly a drone, it's all you can think about, right?
It's terrifying.
It's, it's like why it's rare to drop a live hand grenade because it's pretty much all you can think about. So Yeah, I was really worried about flying in China. I had been arrested one time for flying over the Forbidden City. I had to talk my way out of Chinese prison. And that's a story that's in another photo. This one I love. This is called An Abandoned Yacht in the Middle of Chinese Government Housing.
Oh, this is China, not
Um,
Hong Kong. Or sorry if any government officials listening to me, but this is mainland China, not Hong Kong, which I guess is part of China.
no, it is Hong Kong.
Okay, good.
Sorry if I misspoke there. Um, and so I just launched the drone really fast, got it up, and then like I have my friends around me, so they're always looking for cops or whatever. So I've gotten to be pretty sneaky with it. And I figured if I could talk myself out of Chinese prison one time, I could do it a second time.
Well done. Well done. When I ran Uber in Hong Kong, I got arrested as well. So other stories for another time. How about this one? How long is this exposure? Where is it?
This is on the South Island, New Zealand. This is in Tekapo, which is about 3 hours north of Queenstown. It's actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site for their skies. And when you're in the southern hemisphere, you actually get to see most of the Milky Way, like 70% of it. And so I slept out here overnight with one of my friends. I was in a sleeping bag and he was in one beside me. And it was one of those nights where we just stayed up late and just drinking lots of wine, like right out of the bottle. It's a pretty high class operation. And I shot this with a 21 millimeter f1.4 Summilux Leica lens on a Sony A7R Mark III. And it's all natural light, except for some of the light that you see there on the weeds. I used my phone to light up some of those. And I think this is a 25-second exposure. The exposure changes based on the lens. If you go longer than that, you see a little bit of star trail, which you don't want to see.
Now,
Yeah,
are
I
you a
love this
Sony guy
photo.
now? I remember back in the day, I think you were Nikon, but do you use Sony?
I use pretty much everything, but yeah, I'm a Sony man now. None of these companies pay me, or I'm not a shill for any of them. I get free cameras from everybody, so I was Hasselblad for a while, but man, that thing is slower than Christmas.
All right, and now this one has a unique kind of texture on it. It has a very different feel from most of your work. But what's the quick story here?
Yes, this is in the Guangxi province of China. And I love to do textured work. And so usually what I'll do is sometimes, Sam, the sky's a little bit flat in China, as you know. You can get, well, it can be anywhere, but I notice it especially there. It's sort of just kind of like this gray blah, blah, blah. And, but I see it in sort of this ancient lithograph kind of sense. You know, there's something about China that feels lithography. I don't know why. And so what I'll do, if the sky's a little blah, I'll go ahead and get the composition I want to begin with. And then I might spend like an hour or two going around taking pictures of all of the different rocks or sand or walls or leaves or tree branches or roots. And so I get a collection of maybe, 50 different textures. And then what I'll do is I'll bring all the textures into Photoshop as different layers. I'll mix them different styles, hard light, soft light, and then I'll kind of use my Wacom tablet and like paint in like what textures make sense. Because to me, a place is this is maybe the mushroomy guy in me. Like it's all connected, like the leaves and the roots and the plants and the cliff wall and the rocks and the sky and the mountains, water, everything far and distant. It's all part of one contiguous whole. So this is a joy for me to kind of recombine all these constituents into one compelling whole.
And has like you've mentioned psychedelics a few times, the mushroom guy in you, has that been part of you for a long time? When did you start to start those journeys?
I started probably at Burning Man. That's when I had my first few experiences. I was always scared to death of doing drugs because I'm 51 now, so I grew up in where they brainwashed you that like no matter what you do, you're going to end up in the gutter like OD'd, which is completely wrong. And so the people that ran my camp at Burning Man, these are two doctors,
What year is
and they
this?
know me. What's that?
What year is this?
Oh, I've been going to Burning Man for 11 years in a row, and there's a 2 year gap because of COVID. So it's exactly 13 years ago. And so they're a husband, wife, doctor team, and they knew me really well because I'm kind of in the same way. Like they said, like, Trey, we think you would really like drugs. I was like, I don't know, I'm kind of scared, guys. They're like, no, trust us, we're doctors. And so like they're all real drug nerds too in my camp. So they would measure out milligrams and all this kind of stuff. Like, first, we're going to start you with some MDMA. We feel like you're going to like it. Just trust the chef. I was like, okay. And they were right. And then I started trying different things, and I would start to think about my head and my mind like, the doll houses, that girls might use growing up. You have all the little rooms. Well, this would open up new rooms that I could go into anytime, even afterwards. And like, it made me more loving. It made me more sensitive. It made me more conscious, more empathetic, appreciate the earth more. And then, since then, I've gone to all the other types of things. Ayahuasca. I did the crystallized poison of the Sonoran desert toad in the form of 5-MeO DMT. Most recently, about 3 months ago, I went down and did ibogaine in San Pancho, Mexico, where I laid in a fetal position for 3 days, crying and laughing and everything. And that was great. Like, ever since that, like, I haven't had a single drink of alcohol. And I've been like extra serene and all that kind of stuff. And so like, there's something about these plant medicines that are so fascinating. And that's the ultimate goal, or a ultimate goal in life. I don't know if, like, maybe it's Aristotle that said, know thyself. And the kind of just breakthroughs that you have to getting to know yourself and like seeing your entire life, like from age 3 onward, and seeing your whole journey. Like, it's like stepping into the matrix and looking at yourself objectively. Like, how can I be a better person? How can I be more conscious? How can I be more loving, more creative? How can I show up better in my relationships? These are all incredible natural things that are around us all the time. And all of our ancestors did this kind of stuff too. We've become so separated from nature, and it's become so vilified. But thankfully, it's all making a comeback. And even, for well people, it can be the most mind expansive thing that can just reduce anxiety and just increase the amount of like love, the value of all your relationships, and everything you see and touch just gets better.
Yeah, I feel like I hear this a lot. And Tim Ferriss just launched an NFT project, donated all the primary kind of sales to psychedelic research. And but yeah, the idea that if you take it, no more alcohol for 3 months. I'm hearing more and more. I do feel like had we had you on the show 12 years ago, I would have been a very different person. But you would know that better than I.
Yeah, I've definitely changed a lot. Hey, we're all works in progress, right? We're all doing our best with the tools at our disposal and the lessons that we've learned. And I know that the more uncomfortable I make myself, the easier life is, because life is constant change. And you probably got this since you've traveled all over the place. Travel, in a way, is a proxy for making yourself uncomfortable, because you may not speak the language, you won't know the subway system, you won't know how to get food. Like, that is real discomfort. So I think people that purposely put themselves into uncomfortable situations, that is really how you grow. And it's a lot easier just to stay comfortable and easy. That's why artists have such a hard life, because we're always pushing ourselves and tearing ourselves apart to get to know ourselves, to try to create something. And insofar as we're trying to create something, we're also creating ourselves. So that's a counterintuitive truth to life, is just keep yourself uncomfortable, try to maximize your sensorium. And not only will you get to know yourself better and love yourself more, but it makes life so much easier, not just for you, but for all of those in your orbit.
Yeah. Great. Well, I think we are running out of time here, so I think we will end it there. But it's it's really just an honor to have you on the show. As I said, I've long admired what you've been able to do as a travel photographer who's just made a living out of it in so many different interesting, cool ways. And the thing I just consistently see among successful creators is this great sense of authenticity and just being yourself and being a person who collectors, in the case of NFTs, or students or learners or fans or whatever, just latch onto because they know they're getting someone who's real and true to themselves. And I think that you really embody that. So it's just awesome to have you on the show, and I really appreciate you taking the time. And good luck with this project. We'll be following along.
Pleasure.
All right, that is it for this episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you would like to help us out, head on over to proof.xyz and click on the reviews button at the very top and leave us a 5-star review. Thanks so much. Take care.